I didn't move in for help. I moved in for love. But what I got was a lock on the bathroom door and a cold bowl of soup that came with a side of silence. My name is Helen Monroe. I'm 68 years old, and I lost my husband Robert last winter. Breast cancer doesn't just hit women, but life does. It hit me like a train. We were married for 43 years. He was my only love, my anchor, the one who always brought me tea when I couldn't sleep and held my hand when my mother passed. He was there for every rough season, until the last one, when I had to be the strong one. He started forgetting things. Then the weight dropped off. Then the pain came, and it never left. We fought for months, chemo, radiation, hospice. I held his hand as he slipped away. His last words were just a breath. Don't let them push you aside. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought he meant the doctors, the illness, but now I know he meant something else. After the funeral, everything went quiet. Too quiet. The house was still filled with him. His coat still on the hook, his slippers by the bed, his cologne faint in the bathroom cabinet. But he wasn't there. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for someone who no longer breathed beside me. I stopped cooking. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped being me. The people from church brought casseroles and warm hugs for the first week. Then it was just polite check-ins, then radio silence. My neighbors stopped waving. Maybe they didn't know what to say, or maybe they thought grief was contagious. Either way, the world moved on. I didn't. My daughter Dana would call every few days. Sometimes she put the grandkids on the phone, but they were distracted. Always mid-game, mid-snack, mid-nothing. Then one evening she said, "Mom, why don't you come live with us for a while? Be near the kids. It might help you feel useful again." She didn't mean it cruelly. I think she thought she was helping. I looked around my empty house. There was no one to cook for, no one to tuck in, no one to say goodnight. Just me, the ticking clock, and the quiet hum of appliances. I wanted to believe Dana's offer came from love, not obligation. So I said yes. I sold the house, packed only what I could fit in 2 suitcases, one for clothes, one for memories. I wrapped our wedding photo in towels. I kept Robert's favorite mug, and I tucked a small, sealed box in the side pocket, a velvet pouch of ashes. Not all of him, just enough. Just the part one couldn't let go of. Dana lived in Louisville in a spacious 2-story with her husband Rick and their 2 kids. It sounded warm, full, busy. I imagined laughter, dinners together, watching TV with the grandkids, maybe teaching them how to make pecan pie like Robert loved. The day I left my house, I locked the door twice. Not because I was scared someone would break in, but because I knew no one else would ever walk through that door again. That chapter was closed. I whispered goodbye, not just to the house, but to the life I'd built inside it. On the bus ride to Louisville, I stared out the window as winter trees blurred past. I tried to imagine what came next. I wasn't expecting luxury. I wasn't expecting celebration. But I was hoping, just hoping, to feel like I still belonged somewhere. I thought I was going to a place called home. But I was wrong. Rick didn't come out to greet me. He stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, squinting like I was a door-to-door salesman who showed up too early. Dana stepped out behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Hi, Mom," she said quickly, and gave me one of those hugs that feel like you're hugging a cardboard cutout of the person you used to know. The kids came out when she called them Max and Ellie. Max gave me a side hug without looking up from his phone. Ellie mumbled, "Hi, Grandma," then ran back inside when the wind picked up. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. I didn't expect squeals or welcome banners, but I guess I expected something. Dana didn't offer to help with my luggage. Rick didn't either. I carried both suitcases inside myself, my bad shoulder throbbing by the time I got to the hallway. The house was tidy, modern, full of clean lines and beige rugs. No photographs on the walls. No smell of cookies or stew or anything that said family. It felt like a furniture catalog. Pretty, cold, and unlived in. Rick gestured toward the basement door. We set you up downstairs. It's all yours." His voice was clipped, efficient, like he was assigning a storage bin to a new tenant. Dana gave me a quick smile. "We figured you'd want your own space. Peace and quiet, you know." The stairs creaked as I followed Rick down. The basement had a futon with a thin gray cover, a little fridge humming in the corner, and a floor lamp that flickered when turned on. There was no stove, no window, no clock, just a bathroom tucked in the back with a folding door and a smell of mildew clinging to the walls. Rick handed me a small key on a ring. "This is for the bathroom," he said, "just so everyone has their boundaries. It keeps things organized." He smiled like he'd just handed me a welcome gift, not a lock for a toilet. I nodded. What else was I going to do? Tell him I raised his wife while working 2 jobs? That I held Dana's hand through asthma attacks and first heartbreaks? That I once drove 4 hours at midnight just to bring her a cake she forgot for a bake sale? No, I just took the key and thanked him. That night, I lay on the futon and stared at the exposed ceiling beams above me. The mattress had the give of a yoga mat, and the hum of the mini fridge filled the room like static. My back ached, my joints stiffened, but I stayed still. I didn't want to be needy. I didn't want to be a problem. Not on the first night. I thought about Robert. He would have hated this place. He used to say that basements were for tools and paint cans, not people. He would have raised hell the moment he saw that lock on the bathroom door. He would have packed my bags himself and taken me home. But there was no we anymore. Just me. The next morning, I woke early. My joints were screaming. I made my way upstairs quietly, wearing socks so my steps wouldn't echo. Dana was in the kitchen, stirring something at the stove. Rick sat at the table, laptop open, tapping away. I opened the pantry without thinking. Just habit. Just looking for coffee. Rick looked up. Going somewhere? I laughed a little. Thought he was joking. He wasn't. "We just prefer you ask first," he said. "We're teaching the kids about structure. Can't have people grabbing food whenever they want. People, just people now." Dana didn't even turn around. She kept stirring her soup. Then she said, "He's right, Mom. You're not a guest. You're a burden." Her voice was flat, scripted, like she'd rehearsed it in her head 100 times. I felt something in my chest tighten, not like a stab, more like a slow twist, as if grief had found a new place to settle. I nodded, just once. Then I walked back downstairs. I didn't cry, not that day, not even when I got back to the basement and sat there for hours, staring at the key Rick gave me like it meant something. Maybe it did. Maybe it was a symbol. A reminder that in this house, even going to the bathroom required permission. I stopped going upstairs unless I had to. I kept my movements quiet, calculated, 2 soft steps at a time, no creaks. I waited until I couldn't hold it anymore to use the bathroom, and I ordered groceries on my phone when I could afford it. They never offered to add me to the dinner count. Never said, "Mom, we're making spaghetti, want some?" It was always just the clink of dishes upstairs, the laughter of the kids, the sound of a family that I was no longer part of. Sometimes Dana would text, not to check on me, not to ask how I was doing, just things like, "Can you pick up Ellie from school?" or "Laundry's in the dryer, can you fold it?" I said yes every time. I even refold the towels when Rick huffed that I didn't do them right. I wanted to believe they just didn't realize what they were doing. I wanted to believe it was me, not them. Then came the little things. The shoes. I always lined them neatly by the front door. Habit from a lifetime of keeping things tidy. One night, Rick walked past them and sighed, then turned to me. "Can you keep your shoes in your area? The kids keep tripping." I looked down at the pair. They were flush against the wall. "My area," he'd said, like I was a temporary exhibit in a museum. Another night, Dana mentioned the walking noises. She said the floorboards creaked when I moved at night and that Ellie had trouble sleeping. I nodded. I was already wearing socks, already tiptoeing, already shrinking. The day I realized they weren't just cold, they were trying to erase me, was the day Dana announced they were going to Myrtle Beach for 5 days. A family vacation. The words hung heavy. Family. I asked gently if I could join them. I'll pay my own way, I offered. Dana didn't meet my eyes. It's not the right time. Rick said, we need some nuclear family bonding. Then he patted my shoulder like that made it okay. I tried not to show how much it hurt. I offered to house sit. Rick said, you'll be here anyway. Then he laughed like he'd made a joke. The morning they left, I watched them load the SUV. Dana gave the kids snacks. Rick checked the tires. I stood by the porch steps, unsure if I should wave. No one looked at me. Before they drove off, Rick came back inside. He walked down the stairs into my space and took the car keys off the wall hook. Just a safety thing, he said. Don't want you getting lost or anything. I asked, can I at least go to the store? He smiled, wide fake. We stocked your fridge. They hadn't. Once they left, I walked to the mini fridge and opened it. One old bottle of water. A half-used jar of mustard. That was it. I climbed the stairs to the pantry. Padlocked. Then I saw it. In the kitchen trash can. A whole rotisserie chicken. 2 full loaves of bread, still in the packaging. Thrown out. Untouched. Like a message. You don't get to eat what we eat. I didn't feel sad. Not anymore. Sad was soft. Sad was curled up in the basement, hoping someone remembered you existed. This was something else. Something harder, heavier. I sat at their kitchen table in the silence they left behind. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something rise in me. I had raised Dana better than this. I had stood in that very kitchen 25 years ago with a toddler on my hip, heating soup for her through the worst flu of her life. I had paid for her braces, her prom dress, her wedding. And now I was an afterthought. No, not even that. I was a burden. Not anymore. I didn't plan it. Not really. I didn't sit in that chair thinking of revenge. I just sat and stared at the trash can like it had insulted me personally. A whole chicken, 2 loaves of bread, thrown out before a trip. Not because they were spoiled, but because I might reach for them. I stood up slowly. My knees popped, same as always. But this time, they carried me differently. Not heavy with grief, not slow with age. Just steady, like they remembered what I had forgotten. That I used to be someone who didn't wait for permission. Rick's home office was down the hall, past the guest bathroom no one ever let me use. The door wasn't locked. He liked to brag about his little vault to anyone who'd listen. Biometric lock? Nah, he'd say. Old school combo. Can't hack steel. I remembered the numbers. I'd seen him punch them in once when I was bringing in the mail. 2007, Dana and Rick's wedding year. 11, his old college jersey. He was predictable like that. The safe clicked open without a fuss. Inside was a Glock in a locked case, untouched. 2 watches, a few envelopes of cash. I didn't touch anything but one bundle. $300 in 20s. I left the rest. I wasn't here to steal. I was here to reclaim something, even if I didn't know it yet. I took a scrap of paper from the printer tray and wrote slowly, carefully, in pen that didn't smudge. You took the keys. You locked the food. I'm not your hostage. I'm not your child. I'm not your burden. Then I folded it and placed it right on top of the empty space where the cash had been. I closed the safe, left the room, grabbed my bag from the basement, tucked Robert's ashes deeper into my coat pocket, and I walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't leave it ajar for drama. I just pulled it shut. One clean sound. I called a cab, paid cash, had it drop me off at a cheap extended stay motel on the other side of town. It smelled like old cigarettes and carpet glue, but I could breathe. I turned on the heat, took off my shoes, laid down on the stiff mattress and stared at the ceiling. Then I smiled. It was small. It didn't reach all the way, but it was real. That night, I ordered a burger, fries, and a cold beer. First hot meal in days. First meal I didn't have to feel guilty for eating. I slept for 9 hours straight. In the morning, I opened my laptop. The motel Wi-Fi was slow, but it worked. I opened my files, scrolled past the funeral photos, past the scanned insurance documents, until I found what I was looking for. Before Robert passed, he'd made me promise one thing. If anything happens, don't give up your life to theirs, he said. Promise me you'll keep something for yourself. I thought he meant emotionally, but he meant something far more literal. There was $140,000 in a separate life insurance policy. Not the big one Dana knew about. This one was just in my name. Robert told me to keep it quiet. I don't trust Rick, he had whispered from his hospice bed. I see how he looks at you, like your luggage someone forgot to unload. He was right. I never touched that money until now. That morning, I made 2 phone calls. One to a lawyer, one to a realtor. I wasn't going back to that basement. Not ever. I found the duplex by accident. The realtor had sent me a list of senior communities and retirement condos, but this one wasn't on it. It was older, tucked behind a diner and a laundromat in a working-class part of Louisville. The paint was chipped, the porch creaked, but when I stood there and looked up at the slanted roofline, something in me settled. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. 2 small units, side by side. One for me, one to rent. I paid in cash. The realtor raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. I signed the paperwork, picked up the keys, and moved in that same week. For the first time in months, I unpacked with care. I hung Robert's photo over the mantel. I placed his coffee mug by the sink. I folded the quilt his mother had made at the foot of my new bed. The air smelled of dust and possibility. I opened all the windows, even the stubborn ones. Let the sun in. Then I met Lisa. I'd gone to the local church pantry to drop off some canned goods. She was there, standing in line with 2 boys by her side, maybe 6 and 8, both quiet, eyes too old for their faces. Lisa had that look I knew too well. Tired, not just in her body, but in her bones. The kind of tired that comes from pretending you're okay for too long. She said thank you when I let her step ahead of me. Then we started talking. 5 minutes turned into coffee. Coffee turned into stories. Stories turned into tears. She was trying to get out of something bad. An ex who stalked. A landlord who threatened. She worked night shifts and still couldn't make rent. I just want a safe place for my boys, she whispered, wiping her face with a napkin. Just somewhere I don't have to look over my shoulder. I didn't hesitate. I have a unit next to mine, I said. You can have it. $1 a month until you get on your feet. She blinked at me like I'd spoken a different language. No one does that, she said. I do, I replied. And I don't want anything back, except maybe a promise that you'll lock your doors at night and let those boys be kids again. She cried then. Not quiet tears, not graceful ones. She sobbed into her hands while her oldest son reached over and held her arm like a grown man. They moved in 3 days later. They came with 1 small suitcase, a cracked laptop, and a cardboard box filled with canned peas and dented soup cans. I helped carry their things in, gave her Robert's old couch, bought a microwave off Craigslist, a used table, 2 bunk beds. When she saw the room set up, she covered her mouth with both hands and whispered, God must have sent you. I shook my head. No, I'm just a tired old woman with no one left. She looked at me through red eyes and said, You gave me someone to believe in again. That night I made spaghetti, real sauce, garlic bread. The boys helped me build a birdhouse out on the porch, while Lisa laughed for the first time in weeks. And for the first time in what felt like years. I wasn't lonely. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't a burden. I was home. I thought it was over. Or at least, I thought they'd moved on. No one called. No one showed up. Weeks passed. Lisa settled in. The boys started school nearby. I planted tomatoes, made jam, slept with the windows open. Then I saw the car. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just come back from the grocery store, arms full of eggs, milk, bread, and there it was. parked 5 houses down, half hidden behind an overgrown bush. A gray SUV, same model Dana drove, same cracked bumper on the left, tinted windows. I stood there, keys in hand, bags digging into my fingers. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at it. Then, like it had a mind of its own, the engine started. It pulled away slow, too slow, as if daring me to run after it. I didn't, but something inside me went cold. 2 days later, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just a single photograph inside. A snapshot of me and Lisa's boys sitting on the porch. We were building a birdhouse, smiling. The boys were holding paintbrushes, cheeks messy with blue and green. Across the photo, written in thick black Sharpie, "You replaced your grandkids with trash." No name, but I didn't need one. That night, my tires were slashed. All 4. My neighbor across the street saw someone in a hoodie limping near my driveway around midnight. Rick had knee surgery last fall. He still walked with a slight drag on his left foot. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I wasn't afraid. I was angry. But anger without proof is just noise. I needed more than rage. I needed strategy. The next morning, I called my new lawyer. Not the one who'd helped with the real estate. This one was sharper, lean, dangerous, in the way good lawyers should be. I showed him everything, the photo, the tire report, the old voicemail Rick had left screaming about the money I stole. He listened, then leaned back in his chair and said, "You want them out of your life for good?" I nodded. "Then we start now." We rewrote my will, removed Dana and Rick from every document, power of attorney, health proxy, insurance, everything. We added a third-party trustee, locked it all down. Lisa wasn't just protected. She was named as the sole executor of my estate, and her boys were listed as contingent beneficiaries. That same week, I installed security cameras. Front porch, side gate, alleyway, even one facing the street. My lawyer helped me register everything legally. Every angle, every second. 3 days later, Dana showed up. She didn't knock. She walked straight into the yard, marched up to my porch, and started yelling, "Mom, we need to talk. Now." Lisa peeked out from her window and called me immediately. I stepped out, kept my distance. Her eyes were wild. No makeup. Hair mess. She held a folder in one hand. "This is a petition for guardianship," she said, thrusting it toward me. "You're clearly not well. You've cut off your family. You've given away money to strangers, and we're not going to let you destroy everything Dad left for us." I didn't say a word. I opened the folder slowly, right there on the porch. Real court documents. A lawyer's signature at the bottom. Statements saying I was mentally unstable. Claims that Lisa was preying on a grieving, vulnerable elderly woman. "Do you really believe that?" I asked. My voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. "Or is this just about the money?" Dana didn't answer. She turned around, walked down the steps, slammed the car door like a teenager. I stood there, holding the papers, heart pounding in my chest. She was willing to say I'd lost my mind, just to take what wasn't hers. And that's when I knew this wasn't about grief. This wasn't about family. This was war. The next day, I handed the guardianship folder to my lawyer. He didn't look surprised, just quietly furious. He skimmed the statements, took notes, then said, "They want to play dirty? We'll go deeper." We filed a motion to dismiss the guardianship request. Attached my medical records, clean. A psychiatric evaluation I voluntarily took last year, clear. We submitted security footage from the porch, the photograph, the tire slashing report, the voicemail, the note I found in the trash. But Rick and Dana weren't done. 2 weeks later, CPS showed up. Someone had reported Lisa, accused her of child neglect, said she was cohabitating with a mentally unstable man, claimed I'd been alone with her children in unmonitored and inappropriate situations. They came with polite smiles and clipboards. asked questions, walked through Lisa's unit, opened the fridge, looked under the boys' beds, interviewed the kids separately. Lisa cried the moment they left. Not loud, not dramatic, just sat on the floor and wept into her hands like a woman whose soul had been scraped raw. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew they'd use your love against you." 2 days later, the case was closed. No concerns, they said. Nothing to follow up on. But the damage was done. The boys were scared. Lisa couldn't sleep. And I was done waiting. I called my lawyer again. "I want to go further," I said. "Not just defend myself. I want to expose them." He didn't blink. "Then we build a case." And we did. Turns out Rick wasn't just manipulative, he was also sloppy. My lawyer and his investigator found civil complaints tied to Rick's consulting business. One client said he'd promised them a government contract that never existed. Another woman had paid him twice for a strategy package and received nothing but vague PDFs. Worse, he had taken out loans against their house. Big ones. They were underwater, drowning financially. That's why they wanted my money. That's why they came after me like vultures. But that wasn't even the final nail. One morning, I got an alert from my credit report, an unusual activity flag. I hadn't used my social security number in months. I checked the account. It wasn't mine. Rick had opened a credit card in my name. Spent over $7,800. Flights, electronics, even part of that Myrtle Beach trip. He used a P.O. box for the billing address. Thought I wouldn't notice. I froze the account immediately, called the bank, filed a fraud report, sent everything to my lawyer. He smiled when he saw the paperwork. "This is it," he said. "This will bury them." We submitted the fraud report to the same court where Dana's guardianship case was pending. Suddenly, her lawyer backed off. The petition was withdrawn quietly without apology. But I wasn't interested in silence anymore. I filed a civil lawsuit against Rick for financial fraud, emotional abuse, and elder manipulation. Every piece of dirt we had, CPS stunt, tire slashing, forged credit accounts, voicemail threats, and every screenshot from every passive-aggressive message, was bundled and presented in court. Dana tried to play innocent, called me crying. Mom, I didn't know he was doing all that. I was scared. I thought you were, losing it. I asked her one question. When he locked the pantry and took my keys and told me I couldn't eat, "What did you do?" She didn't answer, so I hung up. The court ruled in my favor. Rick was found liable for credit card fraud. He was ordered to pay damages. A warrant was issued, and his so-called consulting business collapsed within weeks. His name started circling online. Articles, warnings, stories from past clients. That's the thing about scammers. Once the mask slips, people remember. Dana filed for divorce 6 months later. She sent me a letter, 6 pages long. Apologies, explanations, regrets. She wrote about fear, pressure, Rick's manipulation. She wrote about the kids missing me. I didn't answer. Some wounds don't need closure. They need boundaries. I stayed in Louisville just long enough to see the court case through. Then I called Lisa into my unit one afternoon and handed her a manila envelope. Inside was the deed to the duplex. "It's yours," I said. She blinked, confused. "What?" "Fully paid. Fully yours. For you. For the boys. You gave me family when my own didn't." She started shaking. She couldn't even speak. She just fell into the couch and sobbed into her palms. The boys hugged my waist so tight I could barely breathe. I held them close, told them to protect their mom, told them they were good boys, strong boys, worth everything in the world. Then I packed what little I had. I left Kentucky behind. I moved to a small town in Missouri, one of those places where the diner staff knows your name by the second visit and the dogs outnumber the people. I found a little white house with peeling shutters and a porch swing. There's a garden out back. I grow tomatoes, lavender, Robert always loved lavender. I joined the local VFW, made friends at the Thursday book club, walked dogs for the shelter on weekends. Sometimes I make lemon bars and drop them off at the fire station just because it feels nice to bake for someone again. I still miss her sometimes. Not Dana, the girl she used to be, the one who sat on the back steps when she was 10, asking me if birds ever get tired of flying. The one who left drawings on my pillow and told me I was her favorite person in the world. But that little girl is gone, and I finally understand blood doesn't make you family. Respect does. Lisa, and the boys still send me letters, photos, little drawings. They call me Grandma Helen now. Last Christmas, I got a handmade ornament with all our names written in glitter glue. It hangs in my window year-round. I kept Robert's ashes on the mantel until spring. Then, one morning, I walked out to the garden, dug a small hole beneath the lavender and let him go. Not because I was done loving him, but because I was ready to love myself again. They tried to erase me, tried to lock me away in silence, tried to make me believe I was a burden. But I wasn't. I was the backbone, the history, the woman who raised a daughter and buried a husband and still had more to give. And I will never let anyone make me feel small again.